I had a couple of handful of grapes and it shot my blood sugar up to 225. Some of you did not believe me. Others just disagreed. A blood sugar spike of nearly 150 points seems very unlikely for a normal person. Not even a soda would spike it that high. For starters, the blood sugar spike was that high. Not only did I double confirm that my continuous glucose meter was accurate and reading correctly, I triple checked on my finger. The grapes that I ate were bioengineered. They were cotton candy grapes, which I don't know how many grams of sugar are in each of those, but dang, it really was, well, a sugar rush, but a powerful spike in my blood sugar. In addition, there was a different chemistry set happening inside my body. After years and years, might I say decades of me being insulin resistant, I have now been in a ketogenic state and routinely fasting for almost a decade. With that, my production of insulin has decreased in general, but it's specifically low at the end of a fast. So at the moment where I had this handful of grapes that maybe took my temptation from 1 or 2 grapes to a couple of handful of grapes and shot that blood sugar up really high, one of the reasons I was able to do that was the lack of insulin that was ready to be produced at the first bite. After 2 days of not eating, and I'm not exaggerating, I think I had fasted around 60 hours when I took those handful of grapes. The vacuoles of insulin inside my beta cells, well, they hadn't been primed. They had been dormant. For a couple of days, I didn't produce much at all. I hadn't needed to. And having done that for months on end, where I fast for an extended period of time, my production of insulin will take me a good 12 to 24 hours to ramp back up after a long fast. So I popped those grapes in, and practically every morsel of sugar found in the grapes was now circulating in my bloodstream. And although I metabolized some of it, I did not use an excessive amount of insulin to tuck it away very quickly. When you look at people who have been in routine ketogenic state and then they go to check their blood sugar and the doctor gives them a big dose of glucose to check what is your blood sugar and how well can you manage it, their vacuoles of insulin are not primed. They're not ready for that sugar. And because their body has not been exposed to sugar for long periods of time, they have to ramp up in order to be ready for that. The good news is the body does that really quickly. Within 1 or 2 handfuls of my cotton candy grapes, if I had done this experiment again 6 hours later, I would have blunted the peak of that blood sugar from the same amount of grapes, just because of the priming of my insulin after having fasted. Now, in fairness, a better approach would not have been to have such a glucose load in my system after fasting. It would have been to have some fermented food with a few carbohydrates stimulating insulin production, but not hammering that I needed a bunch of it. Next we have, you shouldn't take sugary foods on an empty stomach. Eating grapes without fat raised your blood sugar so high. In part, this is exactly what we were talking about a minute ago. The delivery of blood sugar was not blunted in any way. It really rushed into my circulation, and the hormone that keeps it lower, insulin, was in short supply for that moment in time. You could have seen a slower absorption of that glucose with fat as well as with fiber. I don't know if I should go into that. I don't want to dip my grape in any kind of fat. So grapes with fat. Okay, some cheese and some grapes would have been a good idea, but I didn't do that. And you're right, it did spike my blood sugar. Fruit is wonderful if you are active and don't gorge on it. Stop demonizing healthy foods. My sugar is always 5.3 or lower, so you are so wrong. If you're saying that your hemoglobin A1C is 5.3 or less, that's saying you do have an excellent control of your blood sugar and that your average is in those low 100s. If you're using metrics of millimoles per liter and you're saying your blood sugar is never higher than 5.3, that equates to about a 94 blood sugar in America. And I'm gonna guess if you have fruit and you only check your blood sugar when the number is showing you that low, that you're not wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor. So every few minutes it was showing what is my blood sugar, and by golly, it did peak. Most people who have fruit, even healthy people, will see a spike in their blood sugar, but they will be able to control it back down to normal. I will tell you that I'm in the camp that, yes, when I eat sugar and it's on an empty stomach without any fat, and I haven't eaten in a couple of days, I overdid it, and these are the results. If you have been lean and never insulin resistant, you're right that the consumption of fruit is not going to do much to your overall average or even be something to report in on for what it does in the short term after taking in that fruit. However, if you're like me or most of the people that are taking education from this channel, I've been insulin resistant. I've been around the sun a few times with a lot of extra weight. And now when I consume carbohydrates, not just in this setting, but in general, my body tends to make excessive amounts of insulin, and it is not a sign of healthy aging. It is very difficult for me to reverse these medical problems of my own when I spike my blood sugar as high as I did. It is interesting to point out that when foods have added sugar, everybody's on the bandwagon that that's a terrible thing. But when this bioengineered fruit called cotton candy grapes is filled with excess sugar, that somehow your body can tell the difference that it's coming from fruit versus added sugars? Right, it can't. If you're curious what insulin is doing inside your body, check out this video. I'll see you there.